Today's familiar face is a bit of a paradox. It's a video game series that left a huge mark on the industry. It's instantly recognizable, but most of the time there's no desire to play it now. That's right, it's Battletoads. There's no lack of discussion for the Battletoads video game on the NES. And why should there be? It's considered a classic. Whenever people bring up the whole video games as art debate made famous by Roger Ebert, I always point to this game as an example. For its time, the graphics were fantastic, the characters were colorful, and the level design was inspired. There's just so many unique ideas introduced. I especially love this part where the bats or space invaders or whatever try to steal your health. I think it's the only game where the sprites interact with the actual health bar. It's an example of manipulating conventions to create a unique experience between the viewer and the product. You know, art. Yet for some reason, this is one of the franchises that had great marketing potential, but never made it off the ground. I guess you could argue that the severe difficulty of the game sent players packing with their controller cords between their legs. After all, who wants to watch a show or eat a breakfast cereal that reminds you how pissed off you got when you couldn't get past the underground bike level? It's not like you're gonna get any tips. Oh, okay, so right before I hit the energy field, I just cut to a commercial. Therefore, the main characters of the Battletoads, Rash, Pimple, and Zitz, have spent their careers in infamy rather than popularity. Since the game starts in medias res, the actual origin and backstory of the Battletoads universe remains shrouded in mystery. But in reality, there were actually two attempts to explore the origins of the Battletoads. The first one we'll be looking at today is a two-part comic in the May and June issues of Nintendo Power Magazine 1991. Along with articles and tips, Nintendo Power sometimes included comics based on the newest games. In the first panel, we're introduced to the Battletoads, who are beating up some giant rats while spouting some would-be catchphrases. Mad, bad, crazy toads! Let's let this be an anthem for the rest of the comic, shall we? The next panel shows that it was all some sort of computer-generated exhibit, and we're introduced to our three main characters when their boss shows up. Another fine performance in the game generator, my amphibious friends. I mean Dave, George, and Morgan. Pardon me again, I mean Cyclops, Seth Rogen, and Stephen Colbert. That's the nicest thing you can say? Why, Mr. Ziegler, do I detect hostility? In fact, I've been confirming with Silas and the other designers, and we'd like to tweak the difficulty of the level generator to create more thrill power, of course. Go ahead, we haven't lost a game yet. Bring it on, dude! Remember, just tweak the difficulty. We can't risk hurting our precious Battletoads. They're Cyclone's big ticket item right now. Ticket? So in this world, video games are like sports? Rather than buy a copy of the game, people will rather pay good money to see people play it for them? That is so stupid. How the hell is anyone gonna make any money off of that? Jeez, they're just game players. It's not like they get killed or anything. Though I'd like to kill them. And maybe I can. Why? Okay, so the next page we see the programmer working on the game when something goes wrong. That was quite some entrance, Queenie. Where'd you learn that trick? Silence, human, and bow. You stand in the presence of the Dark Queen.
Well, how about that?
Give me a break, beautiful. I made you, and I can unmake you. Okay, who is this guy? I mean, as bad as it sounds, I can wrap my head around wanting to kill the guys he's jealous of. I mean, there's some sick bastards in the world. But a woman pops out of his video game, and he doesn't even miss a beat. That's totally unfair. I mean, he didn't even have to wear a bra on his head or nothing. Who would be so insane that something like this wouldn't even faze them? Wait a minute, let me try something. Son of a bitch, they're popping up everywhere. The only thing I can't get rid of is those pesky Battletoads. They're far too popular. Silas, there is so much more about me that you do not understand. And you did not create me, you pinhead. But you and your friends at Cyclone did create those Battletoads, and I require you to unmake them. And I know exactly how to do it. Dum-dum-dum. Next page, we rejoin our crack team of elite video game players, still wearing their matching jumpsuits for some reason. Go team. I can't put my finger on it, but I don't trust Vakus. No one knows where he came from or anything. His buddy Silas isn't much better.
I'd like to sock him in the jaw. Then he'd understand real thrill power.
Why? He didn't do anything to you. He just wanted to tweak the game that he apparently pays you good money to play for him. Sure, he's got a stupid haircut, and I bet he smells like old people. And that doesn't seem any different from the other dickish bosses people have to deal with. This comic is filled with unprovoked psychopaths. Anyway, Stephen Colbert gets an idea to sneak into Vacoose's office and try to find out about him. Later that night, while all of Psychone sleeps...
You were learning to spell your name. I was being trained to conquer galaxies.
And as our heroes are in the act of breaking and entering, I have to ask, why did they put the guy in sunglasses on lookout while performing this nighttime felony? So they get into Vacoose's office and find out that it's already been ransacked. They then get the idea to check out the video game generator thingy. And despite the damn thing throwing off sparks, our heroes bravely strap the giant electrical equipment to their heads, for some reason.
Oh my frog, what's happening?
Oh my frog. Okay, now you're just trying to piss me off. And you're doing a great job at it! Okay, as if this was a surprise to anyone, the guys are teleported in the video game and transformed into Battletoads. They see that Silas is in cahoots with the Dark Queen, and we finally find out why he's such a dick. I never told anyone, but I wanted to be a Battletoad. You guys got to have all the fun while I toiled behind the scenes. Gosh, I wish we lived in a world where video games were accessible to everyone, instead of just the elite, godlike few. The Queen goes on to say that this world isn't part of their game, but rather an alternative reality that the game has tapped into. All this time they've been controlling actual Battletoads, foiling her minions from the safety of their own universe. But with Silas's help, they have now completely transported into the game, and are now vulnerable to, death. So an epic battle ensues.
What's this? More trouble for the Toads?
I wouldn't know, since there is nothing in this panel to suggest that the situation has changed in any bit. But apparently the red background means that they're losing. But luckily some sort of spacecraft shows up and rescues our amphibious aggressors. Turns out it's Professor T-Bird from the opening of the video game, and he explains why he's happy to help them. Well, I can't stand to see the Dark Queen win at anything, though I once was in love with her.
That's awful, Professor, especially the making out part.
But before we can linger on that lovely image, the Dark Queen's spaceship shows up, and the Toads and T-Bird have to make a run for it.
Despite tremendous odds, the Vulture makes a jump into hyperspace and escapes the Dark Queen's clutches. For now.
Really? Because in the panel it shows the warship right on your tail, blasting the shit out of you. But years of video games and comic books have delved my logic into a nub of naivete, so I believe you. So this issue ends with a new alliance being formed between Professor T and the Toads. Then in the next issue of Nintendo Power, the story continues with a brief recap, and then it gets straight into the action. Now, if you've read enough Nintendo Power, you'll recognize that this comic is just illustrating levels from the game, in order to cultivate interest. After all, this is a promotional magazine. But between the levels, we get shots of Professor T-Bird, the Dark Queen, and Silas from the first comic, who has gone batshit insane. The idea here, I guess, is that the guy is still working for the Dark Queen, but now he's outside of the game, making every level impossibly hard. Just goes to show you that the guy who was writing this knew that anyone playing this game would be driven insane with frustration, and he so kindly gave us the face of our mad architect. And how apropos, because I think this is what we all imagine when we think of the creator of this game. Some sadistic, deranged bastard, gnarly and wading in his own filth as he cackles longer than the night at the expense of all the poor souls mangled by this supposed game. And naturally he's dressed like a pimp, because most of the people who played this game became his bitches. So yeah, eventually the Toads get to the Dark Queen and the comic ends. Yeah, it just ends, right there. They showed every level of the game up to this point, but you actually have to go out and buy the game and beat it in order to find out what happens. What assholes! What are the odds that 99.9% of the people that actually played the game never saw the ending? That is until YouTube and Lord Cat. So yeah, that's the comic origin of the Battletoads, if you can even call it that. You see, the story was written by an actual member of Rare and the Battletoads team. In fact, the plot for the comic was salvaged for the Super NES game, which is really just a port of the NES game with better graphics, a different story, some tweaked levels, and a bonus stage. And honestly, like the game itself, writing is not the Battletoads' strength. While I think it's rather clever, nay brilliant, that they made a story explaining why the game is so difficult, clearly acknowledging that the developers knew this was going to be a bastard to beat, and I think it would have been much better if they included that in the actual game. Who knows, maybe they were going for some sort of meta storytelling about making the next big thing. But even then, there are just things that don't work, like the red herring that is Vakus, or how we as an audience are just supposed to accept the irrational hostilities the Toads have towards the company, just because they're the good guys. And the writer could have at least included the opening bit from the game with the princess, just for a little bit of continuity. I mean, she's not mentioned once in this thing, when it's clear the whole point of the video game is to rescue the princess. I mean, what was her deal anyway? Well, to answer that one, we'll just have to take a look at the infamously bad— what the hell? Oh crap, energy wall, energy wall!